So today we'll go over some bottom position. We'll talk about using a bear trap. So we'll go straight into technique. So, yeah. So we'll talk about a little bit how to enter a guard and such like this and how we can start looking to attack. But the reason why I like to play a bear trap, this is something that, depending on if you're familiar with competitive jiu-jitsu, there's this guy named Felipe Pena. He does this very well. I think especially in no gi, in contrast with the gi, a lot of it, it's harder to make grips and hold people for long periods of time. So I find that a bear trap, which we'll talk about this, we'll just show it first and then we'll talk about it more later, like this, is a nice way to hold someone, because now when he tries to be explosive and move, it becomes difficult. There are a few factors at play here, where one, we're kind of flaring his knee out and forcing his hip to the mat. So when he tries to stand up and try to explode out, right, it can be quite difficult. So we're able to hold them for long periods of time. I feel like this is very similar to almost like a lasso in the gi, but I'm almost lassoing my partner's foot with my own leg, right? So from here, when he tries to move out, it can be quite problematic. And in contrast to like a lasso on the arm, where from here, you'd want a sleeve grip in the gi. In no gi, we don't really have, it's not very robust. Versus, I find that when you do it on the leg here, it can be actually, like, you can hold it against a fair bit of resistance. But first, we'll talk about how we can look to off balance from guard to get here and to really try to attack our partner. So we'll start with them standing. When they're standing, we don't want to just fall to our back, because from here, understanding that if I fall to my back, my partner is going to have a significant mobility advantage over me. They're going to be able to choose when to engage, when not to engage, and they're going to be able to start looking to intercept my feet. So I want to make connection to my partner, that's how I'm going to attack. But when I'm on my back, it's going to be a lot harder for me to make meaningful forms of connection. So let's say I extend my leg, he can just kick the leg out, make grips on me, etc. Because once again, he has that mobility advantage. So generally how I like to approach this is I'm going to hand fight from a seated position and get control of my partner's hands, and then use this as an opportunity to gain connection. So now when he tries to strip any connection I make with my feet, it's going to be difficult. If I were to just try to connect with my feet and he has his hands available to him, it's not wise for me. So from here I can control his hands, whether it be 2-on-1s, 1-on-1s, etc. I feel like, okay, this is fine for me now. And then I can start making connection to my partner's lower body. In jiu-jitsu, a very common form of guard is this kind of De La Riva guard, where you bring your leg from the outside and hook the inside. So from here, this is a really great way for us to start looking to off-balance our partner. But I feel like there's a kind of hole if you only play De La Riva, where if your partner kind of flares their knee outwards, so from here, I can't really keep a strong De La Riva hook. So I'm not sure, I'll ask you guys how familiar you are with like guards and such in a moment, but from here, if we find that we're having trouble playing this because he's giving this the reaction, this is when we can use what's called an R guard in conjunction with a De La Riva. The reason why it's called an R guard, we're going to bring our foot across and we're really pointing our knees to one side. The reason why it's called R guard is more or less kind of, it's called reverse guard. And the reason why it's called reverse guard is because conventionally in jiu-jitsu, you want to be facing your partner. So kind of the reverse of this would be turning away in such a manner. So when we find that we're having trouble with De La Riva, what we're going to do is he's pointing his knee out, I'm switching to this R guard, and I want my shin below his knee to try to off-balance him outwards. And so this is a really nice opportunity for us to then look to off-balance and eventually get into our own attacks. So we'll go over from here how can we make the bear trap and all these different reactions and how we may look to use this in conjunction with other forms of off-balance. But what I want you guys to practice for now is just entering with a hand fight, right? Not just pulling into the guard, because especially in a competitive round, you can't expect someone to just give you a good position to attack from. So we just have to make sure that we're engaging the hands, and then we can use this then as an opportunity to pull into our guards. Once we encounter resistance, depending, if we're able to get a De La Riva, great, we'll talk about this. If he resists this, from here we can off-balance them outwards, and we'll talk about some of our attacks we can use from here. So we went over how we're going to look to play with this De La Riva in conjunction with an R guard. However, from here, we have to be familiar with the off balances of each guard, right? So really, depending on their knee, we want to be able to off balance them in multiple directions, right? Because from here, we talked about just trying to flare their knee out, but this is one of many movements we can actually do from here. So we'll discuss off balances from a De La Riva, and we'll discuss off balances from an R guard. And once again, the way we choose to play a De La Riva or an R guard is based on the orientation of our partner's knee, right? So if their knee's pointing in, I can play De La Riva. If their knee's pointing out, I can play an R guard. So for De La Riva, generally, depending on where their weight is, we can start looking to either move them towards the side of the leg or towards the side of the post leg, right? So from here, if his leg's on the De La Riva side, from here we have off balances in regards to like really trying to circle around, go for the back take, stuff like this. We have off balances where we can start looking to either step on or hook the far leg to start looking to then unweight his leg that we have in a De La Riva. It's important that when we do this, we turn onto our hip. We don't want to stay flat on our back, otherwise they're just going to plant their foot to the mat again. But I'm lifting, taking his foot off of the mat, and turning onto my hip. So now when he tries to return his foot to the floor, it becomes very difficult, right? I can even hook my own ankle, step on his own leg. This is important for us. And then finally from a De La Riva, another direction in which I think is important to be able to off balance in is actually where we kind of hyperextend our partner's knee, where I feel like it's hard to get this De La Riva hook. We can't really circle around. But from here, what we can do is actually start looking to like lay our hamstring on our partner's knee and try to off balance them backwards, almost putting like a bit of a knee bar pressure. We're not trying to injure them or anything, but we're just trying to get their weight to move back. So now as they come back, right, they can bring their weight back. Now we can use this in conjunction once again with all three, right? He might return like from here, and now we can go for our normal De La Riva attacks. So you can see how we can start looking to move our partner in multiple directions to eventually try to get them in a very off-balance position, and that's when it's going to be easy for us to attack. If our partner is in good base, right, I'm not moving it, I'm trying to do an attack, it becomes very difficult for me to actually successfully perform this attack. So it's important that we're able to start looking to move our partner, try to move side to side, and then we can go in for our attacks, right? Then, in the situation of an R guard where we feel like, okay, it's difficult for us to get this, generally, the main two directions I like to attack an R guard is, 你膝盖往外, right from here. I'll either look to do this initial movement where my shin goes slightly below my partner's knee, and my foot is hooking the outside of their thigh. So from here, when he tries to keep his knee pointed in, it's difficult. If I can knock him to a hip, great, but what's likely to happen is they're gonna actually try to stay standing because they don't wanna give up bottom position. So as we go for this initial off balance, what's likely to happen is they're gonna move their weight to their opposite leg. So 重量放到这个腿上, right? And from here, what we're gonna be able to do, because we can't knock them outwards, so from here we're gonna hug our knee, bring our knee to our chest, and then take this foot off of the mat. So very similar to the De La Riva where we take the foot off the mat, but we're just using a different grip. Initially we're using this outside leg, now we're using this inside leg. And now we just have to be able to keep moving our partner. And then as they come back to fight back, we can maybe go back to our initial option. And by being able to move our partner from these different leg positions, this is gonna give us a lot of options to enter into attacks, whether it be here and then enter the leg here. We have a lot of good options, but it's very important that we get to move our partner first. That makes sense? So we'll do this quickly. I just want you guys to practice 3 off balances from the De La Riva, 2 off balances from the R guard, and then we'll build into attacks. And start looking to get into offense, right? So a lot of our offense for today will start from an R guard, right? But just understanding, I mean, there are a lot of things we can do from a De La Riva that I'm not gonna cover, right? I'm not gonna talk about how we can start looking to get behind from a De La Riva. This is probably one of the most common ways people look to play a De La Riva. But from here, what we're gonna really try to do is when our partner resists this and flares their knee open, how we can use this R guard to get our attacks. So especially off of this initial movement, right? There are ways we can start looking to pummel our foot to the hip to try to get into our attacks, but really depending on where their weight is, it's gonna determine how we follow up. So as a broad rule, the way I like to approach this is when I start looking to threaten bringing their hip to the mat, I always like to pummel my foot to their hip. The reason being is I don't want him laying on my foot. So if we come back, if I just keep my foot here, he just basically drops his shin over my foot. This is not what I want. I find this isn't the end of the world. Like there are things we can do to attack, but I find that it's definitely not strong for me. So my preference is when I feel like he resists this, I go here, I bring my foot to the hip. So now my foot's still free to pummel. And depending on now where his weight is, I'm gonna do one of 2 things. If his weight stays on his knee, what I'm gonna look to do is I'm gonna take a thumb post in my partner's armpit. I'm gonna start looking to pull his weight upwards as I shoot my right knee through to get control of my partner's leg here. So this is nice in the sense where I'm now able to switch legs in which I'm attacking. So initially his area of focus might be here, but now because I feel like, okay, there's a lot of weight on this leg, it's gonna be hard for me to attack. The other leg is unweighted. So then from here, I can start looking to go into the opposite side leg, right? This is one attack. The next one is, and we'll go talk about this in depth in a moment, but I just want you to think about this in two directions. Right. From here, if he comes back, I bring the foot to the hip. As he tries to take weight off of this knee, maybe he knows, okay, I'm trying to attack him. My focus is here. He steps up, right? I'm gonna actually look to bring my knees to my chest and then pummel his foot through. So if we come here, we'll talk about a few things that I'm doing to make this work. I'm here, I bring my foot out. As he looks to bring his weight back up, because he doesn't want me to attack this leg, I'm using my right foot in this case to lift his leg off of the mat. It's because I initially use this off balance, and as he comes back, weight's gonna come on this leg, making the leg that I'm hooking light, right? As I do this, I'm pummeling the foot that's now on the hip. I want that knee to be behind my partner's knee, right? And from here, I'm switching to this 2-on-1 on my partner's foot. So now when my partner tries to move me, right, it's hard. I got good control. He tries to put weight on this foot. It's very difficult because now I have this 2-on-1, it's on my stomach. This is gonna make it very easy for me to chain into my own offense. Whether that be starting to split his legs, trying to force his knee to the mat. If he comes back, we can also, we'll talk about in a moment, how from here we can start looking to attack a bear trap, etc. as well. So I want you to be able to practice these two movements with either entering the reap or entering this kind of butterfly ashi. So from here, we get this position. I feel like, okay, his weight's on me, his weight's on the ground, right? I'm gonna thumb post here, shoot my leg through and attack this reap. From the reap, we're making sure to actually scissor our legs, where right now, my hamstring's connected to my partner's hamstring. I'm gonna extend that away. And the other one where it's quad to quad, I'm retracting. What I wanna do is make sure that he can't put his hips into me. I don't want him to be able to drive weight onto me to make it hard for me to finish this heel hook. If I'm just locking a figure 4, he drives his hips into my hips, I'm not gonna be able to finish this ankle lock. There's too much weight, not heel hook, there's too much weight on me. So from here, it's important that I use this ankle to ankle position. So now when he tries to put weight on me, so difficult, right? And from here, we're not gonna finish the heel hook from here. We'll talk about finishing later, but I really want you guys to practice this ankle positioning because this is, for me, has been very important in being able to finish good opponents here. Because if we just go here, man, this, like, not only can he put his weight on you, maybe he frees his knee, takes your back, it's gonna suck, right? So from here, we wanna make sure we go ankle to ankle. So once again, even talk to your partner from here. Okay, can you try to put weight into me, right? No, this is good. And then from here, we can just reset, okay? And then the second situation is, if we're here, we knock him out of base, he doesn't want us to enter this leg, so we enter the opposite foot. And so this is essentially like an X guard butterfly ashi situation. And we'll talk, I just want you guys to hold this, be comfortable here, ask your partner to move a little bit, should be tough, and then we'll talk about transitions into other positions next. All right, so now the seminar is about bear trap, but we haven't talked about bear trap. Now we will. So from here, we have these two transitions, one to a reap and one to this kind of butterfly ashi position where we take their foot off of the mat, right? So let's start with this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the reap position later. So from here, once we manage to take our partner's foot off the mat, we're kind of, the way we're gonna decide how we're gonna play is based off of our partner's knee position. So if their knee's pointing in or out. If their knee's pointing inwards, it's gonna be hard for us to put in a bear trap. Once again, a bear trap from here is throwing our outside leg to the inside and hooking their hamstring, similar to as if it were a lasso, right? So if our partner points their knee in, this is actually gonna be very difficult for us to do. If we find that this is the case, what we have to do is split our partner's legs and drive their knee to the mat, right? From here, this is gonna give us a few different options to attack, but it's very nice because there's no weight on this leg. So it makes it easy for us to start looking to drive their knee to the mat and almost start looking to ground their hips to the mat. So this is either gonna give us an option to, once again, be able to throw in this bear trap, or we can also just use this as an opportunity to come up and sweep, right? Just because as they follow this roll that we're doing, like you'll see a lot of people in AOJ do this actually, where from here, take the foot off the mat, I feel like, okay, now I'm gonna drive the knee down. If they don't move, if they don't follow, from here we can also start looking to expose the back and such, like working from here. Or if we feel like they backstep before us, right? We can even start looking to hook and attack the leg once again, right? We have a lot of good options, whether it be heisting up, attacking the leg, exposing the back. Once again, it's trying to create movement. But I don't want to go into too much depth on this because my focus wants to be the bear trap. But understand that we're going to use this threat to really open up the option for us to go into this bear trap. So by pointing my knee inwards, now he understands that there's this threat of me driving his knee to the mat. So what he's going to look to do is flare his knee out, right? And this is when I'm going to look to pummel my foot in and try to hook my partner's hamstring. I want his foot to be stepping on my stomach, right? This is when I can start looking at a strong bear trap. If we feel like his leg's a little bit too straight for us to get this, we can start looking to use a triangle to lock here. So if we can't use our lasso, we lock a triangle. When we lock this triangle, we're going to initially use this to open our partner's knee. And once we get his knee open, then we look to hook with our foot. So if we look at that one more time, just look at this carefully where from here, if we feel like, okay, we can't get that in initially, I use a triangle, open his knee, and then I can pull my foot through, right? And now I'm basically going to go from a position where I'm kind of flat on my back to where I'm going to be on my left hip. If my left leg's doing the bear trap, I want to be on my left hip, right? And from here, I can kind of just lay here, trap my partner. When they try to move, it's going to be very difficult. It's important that I actually use my thigh to kind of clamp onto their heel. If I just have this leg out, I feel like he is just going to pummel his foot out and escape. But by keeping my thighs clamping onto this heel, so when he tries to move and such, it's very difficult, right? And from here, this is when we're going to be able to have a lot of opportunities to either build up, turn hips, like sweep them, etc. Right? There are even other options where we can start looking to expose the back. Like if we start looking to feed this foot across, we can expose the back and get behind. There are a lot of good options for us here. But what I want you guys to practice to do is using the bear trap first to slow down movement to bring them to the mat. Because understand that, let's say our partner is here, when he's standing, he's going to be more dynamic, more explosive. It's going to be harder for me to slow him down. However, once I can start looking to get to this bear trap, and I can start looking to bring his knee to the mat, bring his hips to the mat, etc., when he tries to do all these dynamic, explosive movements to try to escape, it's going to be so much harder. I'm going to have a lot more of an easy time to start controlling him here and get to our attacks, right? Because honestly, if you hold your partner here, especially when you have control of both legs, which isn't always the case, but for now, we'll start from this position. When they try to move away, similar to if you're familiar with leg locks, people talk about double trouble. If you control both of your partner's legs, it really affects their ability to move in a dynamic and explosive manner. This is exactly what we're doing here. So when they try to move, right, it's so difficult. And then from here, it makes it easy for us to then transition into other forms of offense, especially in no-gi. Like generally, I prefer not to engage in too many scrambles just because I feel like I'll get tired. So I like using positions like these to kind of just slow my partner down to get to my own attacks. That makes sense? So from here, some attacks you can do, you can start looking to attack this foot. If you feel like, okay, I don't want to attack the foot lock, we'll talk about this more later. Just giving you some ideas, nothing too specific yet. We can also start looking to move our hips away to attack the rear body lock, okay? So this is how we can start looking to attack a bear trap from this kind of butterfly ashi position, right from here. So this is one entry. The next entry we'll do is from a reap, which we'll talk about next, but it's gonna end in the same position. So there's the idea is for there to be a fair bit of overlap, but also show you some different ways to look at the position. Okay? Any questions? Sure. So from here, we're playing a De La Hiva. We want to play this De La Hiva, but he flares his knee out, right? As he flares his knee out, instead of using an outside hook, we use an inside hook. We're going to look to off balance him this way first, bring our foot to the hip. And from here, as he comes forward, right, he doesn't want to give us this leg. So I bring my knees to my chest, take weight off of this leg, switch to this 2-on-1. I want to create a situation where his knee's flaring out. So I'm going to split his legs and I drive his knee in. From here, if he doesn't give me any resistance, I can just drive his knee to the mat. However, we're just going to, for the sake of kind of trying to focus on the bear trap, he flares his knee out, and this is often going to happen. This is when we can start looking to pummel this lasso in, or this bear trap. If we feel like we can't get that in initially, we lock a triangle and flare their knee out. When their knee's flared out, then we can once again look to hook here. We're going to go from flat on our back to on our side, and from here, looking to maintain control of the secondary leg as we do so. Okay? All right, so now we went over how to enter the bear trap from this kind of butterfly ashi position. Now we'll show what we can do from the reap, right? So previously, we talked about off balancing, they drop their knee, right? From here, using this to then enter a reap. What can often happen off of a reap, and it really depends on the degree of connection we get to our partner's hip. 你往这边可以吗？对不起。So from here, depends how strong the reap we get is. So let's say we have a good bite. From here, I'm probably gonna stick with the reap. But sometimes we feel like, especially as we enter the reap, they're immediately going for a back step, right? So as they go for a back step, this is the perfect time for then us to enter into this bear trap position, right? We see here, it's basically the exact same as what we were doing, but just off of our partner's reap. Just a caveat, if you're not a brown belt or a black belt, and if you're in the gi, this is illegal, but I think it's good to know. So you're not allowed to do a reap or a heel hook in the gi, and if you're not in no gi, if you're not a brown or black, generally in competition you cannot. But I think it's important to know in training. A lot of the arguments in regards to it being dangerous, in my opinion, is like illegitimate. I think it's more ignorance that makes leg locks dangerous, not so much the moves in themselves. I mean, people get their shoulders destroyed, it's not so different from a knee. It's more ignorance as opposed to it's inherently dangerous. As I won't go on that tangent. So from here, if we can keep our legs locked and their weight away, we can go for the heel hook. But a lot of times, especially when it gets slippery and such, the moment we start looking to enter, so from here, as I enter this position, I feel like he goes straight for the back step. This is when I'm gonna be able to then transition straight into this bear trap position. Once we get to this bear trap, similarly, I'm looking to control the secondary leg. Obviously from here, we can control the secondary leg to kind of exercise this degree of double trouble. So when he tries to move, it's difficult. And from here, we can once again look to try sweep, get on top. We can try to use this to enter the legs. And we have a lot of nice attacks we can go for. I'll go over an attack that I think is quite useful and not too difficult to do. So let's say we're here, right? We go for this. From here, we manage to start looking to enter this leg. Reap, he back steps. From here, we have this bear trap. What I'm gonna look to do is now think about looking to get to an ankle lock on the secondary leg. So from here, once I'm able to get control of the secondary leg, I have my foot behind his hamstring. A mistake I'm seeing a few people make is they're getting here and their knee is pointing outwards because they wanted to flare their partner's knee away. But if my hips are pointing this way, it's gonna be hard for me to pummel this in. I need his knee pointed out as my hips are squared to the mat. That's when I can start pummeling my foot in. And from here, I can start looking to keep control of this leg, fall to my left hip, and from here, once again, clamp their foot. So we have two entries, one from the butterfly ashi, one from this reap. What I like to do here is from here, I'll play between either getting their back or getting to this ankle lock. So from here, we'll talk about how I like to finish the ankle lock to get to the sub. So from here, I generally like using a figure four. I don't like using these conventional, like grabbing my own like guillotine style ankle lock, just because I find it's gonna be hard for me to adjust my grip on my partner's ankle. So I'm gonna take a figure four and I'm not grabbing the top of his shin, I'm pushing the side of his shin. And what I find this allows me to do really well is adjust the depth of his foot, right? If I were to stay here, I really don't have that ability. Similarly here, I feel like it's hard. But from here, I can kind of push his foot up and shallow it out. We're not going for an aoki, we're just shallowing it out so that his heel is tucked on my rib. Why am I doing this? It's to kind of negate my partner's ability to put the boot on his foot. If I were to just take a conventional Achilles grip, like we'll notice let's turn just 90 degrees this way. If I just grab here and his heel's not on my rib, from here, he puts the boot on, it's gonna be very difficult for me to put pressure. But the moment I can start looking to adjust this, put his heel on my rib, from here when he tries to put the boot on, it's very difficult, right? So then we come back. So it's very important for me to then be able to adjust this ankle lock grip to then get his heel to my rib. So I want you guys, when practicing this, to talk to your partner, like, from here, can you try to put the boot on? And it should be very difficult. From here, there are a few things that are important when making this grip. I lock this figure four. I'm gonna bring my hand to my own wrist, and I'm bringing my hand down his shin. I don't want these two things, where my hand's by my forearm, like by my elbow, or my hand's by his knee. Both of these grips aren't gonna be tight. We wanna make sure that we're going shallow on the shin and then close to our wrist. So now when he tries to like put the boot on again, it's difficult. We're not trying to like expand our shoulders. If we expand our shoulders, I feel like he can kind of give us an Aoki lock, and our lower body configuration is not appropriate to finish an Aoki lock. 你就把你脚跟露出来. Yeah, from here, if my shoulders are open, it's gonna be weak. I want to slightly turn my shoulders towards the heel, so now when he tries to slip his heel out, it's difficult. And it's gonna be easy for us to make all of these adjustments because I made him so unathletic. By bringing his knee to the mat, by trapping his foot in place, using the bear trap, he tries to move and such, it's gonna be difficult. So it's gonna make this transition very easy. And once we manage to like lock this in place, it should be pretty tight. Like I'll be able to get a tap from here without moving my legs. But from here, especially in a competitive situation, you wanna be able to like transfer your lower body from the far leg to the near leg. So once we feel like, okay, this grip is super tight, I'm gonna start looking to kind of kick my hips out. And from here, we can start looking to transition to this butterfly ashi. We can start looking to step on the hip. We can start looking to lock an outside ashi. These are all strong attacks for us. If you're competing, I believe, in the gi at black belt, they changed this rule, but I assume for white, blue, and purple, this is still the case where if I'm attacking Shushu's left leg in this case, I cannot proactively force him down in this direction. As people say, oh, you're trying to put pressure on the knee. This is legal for brown and blacks now in the gi. However, something you have to be cautious of. So generally, if you want to attack this and not get DQ'd, you want to try to stay on your back to get this finish. And if your grip is tight, you'll be able to get the finish no problem. If your partner starts looking to turn their upper body and turn away, you do have the right to follow, right? So from here, as long as your ref isn't too incompetent from here, they should be able to they won't DQ you. But it really depends on if he's initiating it or if we're initiating it. I don't like talking about rules too much just because I think it's not super relevant, but to some people it is. So from here, if I want to just stay in place, I can go for the Sanko lock from here. Once again, hand to wrist and low on the shin. And then from here, if I feel like he's turning away, then this is when we can start looking to follow belly down. That makes sense? So the reason why I like using this ankle lock is because I can take away a lot of their movement. If we were to just enter an ankle lock against a standing opponent, this is when our partner can be super dynamic in their escapes. They can kick out, move around, spin, all this type of annoying reactions that might give us trouble. So if we can actually slow them down with a bear trap, it's gonna make our life a lot easier. Okay? Any questions? To the ankle lock? Yeah, so once we get to the bear trap, we control the foot, right? I'm gonna look to fall to the side of the bear trap. And from here, I can start using this kind of Kimura grip to adjust, right? I'm making sure I lock this figure four. I push, get his heel to my rib. And then from here, I bring my hand to my wrist. And now from here, I can basically just push this hand down. And from here, we can get a tap. But from here, ideally, we start looking to move our hips out to then get a finish from here. Because then this is how we're gonna actually be able to get a strong break. From here, like if we keep our legs occupied in this manner, I feel like it's just gonna be like a mild pop. It's not gonna be anything too significant. Okay? All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Understand that if we can get control of the secondary leg, this is ideal for us. So whether it be via a reap, whether it be via this kind of nihotabu, whether it be via our kind of like butterfly ashi position. But sometimes in our efforts to try to get the leg, our partner knows what we want. So they're gonna try to keep this leg away from us, right? So what's gonna happen oftentimes is, especially when we have this proper bear trap in place, they're only able to turn in one direction, right? If you ask your partner from here, can you turn to your right? He really can't, unless I'm rolling with him, right? But generally from here, I'm posted on my hands, trying to build up. I wanna get control, but he's denying me control. What's often gonna happen is he's gonna kind of take this front step over and end on his knees, right? I wanna understand that this is basically one of the two things he can do. I can either grab his leg or he can backstep here. So as long as I can anticipate this, I can now capitalize on this to try to expose my partner's back. When I look to expose my partner's back, I have this reap in place, and this is what's gonna keep his knee to the mat, right? I'm using this in conjunction with a thigh grip. So now when he tries to extend his leg, it's difficult. It's gonna be difficult for me to start looking to take my partner's back if I just stay here, because his foot's on my hip. So if I do this, it is possible I can submit them, but I don't wanna go over calf slicers just because I think they're a little bit risky. And I think you can use this position for more effective means. So from here, instead of trying to go forward first, I'm actually gonna open my hip to clear his foot off of my hip. And from here, I'm still putting weight on the back of his knee as I pull his hip. If I don't do anything here, if I just grab the hip, from here he extends his leg and he's gonna face me. So I'm really trying to place an emphasis on trying to drive weight forward at his knee as I pull his hip. So now when he tries to straighten the leg, he tries to stand up, it's very difficult. And from here we can start looking to then follow up to get behind him. And from here we have a lot of great attacks, whether it be that of a seatbelt, that of a double unders, posting on his hand, etc. But this is a great way for me to really make him unathletic and then start looking to expose his back when he's not giving us his secondary leg. If we can get his other leg, right, from here, if we can get the other leg, great. But sometimes it just isn't possible. He's denying control, right, from here. Okay, I'm looking for the leg. He tries to kick it away. He front steps, right? And then from here, we just start following up to expose the back. So just one little addition to this, and this will be the last technique. So, yeah, any questions? So hopefully this makes sense how we can start looking to use the bear trap, why we would use it, some ways we can enter, and some of the more important considerations and some attacks. Okay? Sweet. 1, 2, 3.